Welcome, welcome. It's Wednesday, February 5th. Morning, coming out of Central Park. 9:30. Bike Talk. Welcome to Bike Talk. Wednesday morning edition. Post Community Board 7 General Board Meeting edition. So let's talk about this for a second. Last night, Community Board 7, this is a community board whose district is basically the Upper West Side. Had a general board meeting where they were voting on a resolution to request. This is the resolution that basically, hey, car traffic and the streets are basically like pretty terrible. Congestion pricing is coming in a year. We all know this. We would like the DOT to do a study on, the most efficient use of the curb space. Most efficient use of the curb space. That's it. The resolution was literally to just ask the DOT to do a study. It's weird because this is the kind of thing that you might like reasonably assume isn't that the DOT's job? Why is this like a district thing? Like wouldn't they want to do this kind of stuff in all of New York City, right? Like why one neighborhood? Why does a community board like need to even vote on this? It's really bizarre, right? It's basically it's asking the DOT to do a study. Now, as we all know, the DOT is super efficient at doing studies, and they knock them out in just like 2 weeks. Just kidding. Who knows how long the study is? I think it's meant to be like before congestion pricing hits, and then after, which after is in a year. It's obviously like the report, whatever the report findings are. I mean, the DOT has plenty of reports that say, things are really unsafe. You really should have protected bike lanes or whatever, or corrals or loading zones. And then the community board votes that stuff down. So these kinds of like studies are non-binding, kind of irrelevant. I mean, they're useful, but like they're non-binding, right? There's no requirement that DOT even does it, because I think the next phase in 5 years or whatever the next thing is will be to then have the community board vote on whether or not they should do any of the things that the DOT is then suggesting. So this is all to say, like, it's a UN resolution, right? It's like a resolution to be like, hey, we would like you to look at this and create a piece of paper that does nothing to the neighborhood, does really nothing, non-binding, whatever. And still, all these car nuts came out. Obviously, all the like bike people and safe street advocates came out as well. I watched, it was live streamed, so I watched it, but God, this thing went on for 3.5 hours till like 10 p.m., Can you imagine being like somebody and having to, the only way to participate in this is to like physically show up and then talk at a microphone that's like, where 1,000 other people want to talk and spout nonsense. And it's like GoFundMe, right? It's like whose story is the saddest, most compelling. It's like, well, I need a car to do X, Y, and Z to visit my ailing relative in Rockland. Because what? There's no trains that go anywhere. We don't have Metro North or whatever, Long Island Railroad or whatever it is, or buses. It's nonsense. But of course the resolution didn't say remove parking and war on cars and make everything bike lanes, but listening to the arguments that some of these people were saying was just like insanity. I mean, a bunch of people said with a straight face, well, there's only 2 uses for the curb. Only 2 possible uses that they could imagine. One was for car storage, and the other was for bike lanes. And you're like, okay, that's not true. Literally in the first paragraph or whatever is the resolution, it specifically said, like, there are many different uses of the curb, like loading zones, bike corrals, even parklets, just areas where you can sit and like relax, which we don't have in New York. All kinds of things. This is interesting. Construction, just stopping everybody. I like this sign. I wonder if I could hire one of these guys to just stand at, you know, crosswalks that don't have stop signs, where drivers just go on through and don't yield ever to people walking. These guys should pop out. It'd be great. These cyclists are pretty aggressive here. They want a piece of the action. Are we slow? We're slow, and we're all going. Thanks. Big truck, red light. So anyway, back to Community Board 7. So ultimately they voted in favor of it. It was 22 votes yes and 12 votes no. The people who voted no, some of them, this guy Jay Adolph, I think, he gave a whole tirade of blah 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 about, you know, I have the right to park my car wherever I want because I pay taxes. They gave a bunch of these weird arguments about they don't really like, Streets Vlog needs to do like a real takedown of these particular arguments. I think they have, but they're just like outright lies. So one of the arguments is, you know, the street advocates are always saying this is a public space, it's a public, you know, public property, and you're basically storing your private crap on public property. So it's a subsidy. You're getting free parking, and that's what's unfair. And they argue, no, it's not free because I pay taxes, and therefore I'm entitled to various parts of, you know, the city, basically. Like, I'm entitled to free parking. It's not technically free because I pay property taxes, this, that, the other thing. I pay city taxes. And, you know, I don't use the schools. I don't have children that are in the schools. So therefore, like, I'm not using that. And it's sort of a tired argument, and it's like just trying to figure out why that analogy doesn't make any sense. Because the one guy was like, well, I have kids, but they're not in public school anymore, but I'm still, you know, my taxes still go to public schools. But the argument is like, well, if you have children, then they are 100% entitled to free public school, right? They can enroll in school. However, the argument that, like, if I purchase a car, I am therefore entitled as a car owner to then store my vehicle wherever I want, like on the curb, is not the same argument, right? Like, I don't mind that my money, that my taxes go to various agencies, regulatory bodies, right? The TLC, to license cabs. I certainly don't really take cabs, but I do understand and support the need for, you know, regulation and the cost that it entails. Public school is a public good. There's benefit that comes from that. And yeah, I guess technically you need a child in order to go there, but all children get to go. Like, that's the point. Whereas there's no requirement. Having a child is not the same thing as owning a car, and there's no entitlement that 100% of car owners are entitled to free, you know, or unmetered parking 100%, right? I don't know. I'm not making a great argument here because I haven't really thought this one through too well, but it just rubbed me the wrong way because that was the example given. And anyway, that's silly because like obviously like tons of taxes go to the city. The city has 8 million people, right? There's tons of boroughs. I don't even go to half the boroughs, you know? I don't step foot, but I'll 100% support it. And if they, but I support safe streets. And anyway, the whole thing was really weird because the whole resolution was just to study what other uses of curb space there could be. Yeah, so I really like that one of the people on the board was like, well, we all know there's only two uses of the curb. Which is so insane and so like narrow-minded. And it's like, well, why don't you visit, you know, any city in Europe and understand like what the value of a curb is to a community. This is a community board. Like they're supposed to be supporting people who live, work, pass through the community, right? People who may not live there but work there, people who commute through the area, maybe on foot, maybe by bus. Literally not a single person brought up buses being able to move more easily. Like maybe that's a good use of curb space. Like curb space is just the, you know, the 15 feet outside of the curb. And it's like, you know, it's hard to imagine because they live on the Upper West Side where the only thing that's happened recently is the protected bike lane up Central Park West going north. However, all these guys are blocking the lane here. You know, so I could understand like if that's your whole your whole reference point is just you know, you don't really go outside of Central Park West and you look outside your window and you see green paint, you're like, yeah, well, it used to be parked cars and now it's not. So sure, but if you go like anywhere else in the world, you realize that the curb parking lanes can easily be turned into bus lanes, protected, separated bus lanes that make bus travel significantly more efficient for, you know, the thousands of people, the greatest good for the greatest number of people. That's literally the resolution, and it's hard to not be behind that. Like I don't understand what they're very me and angry, and they call the transportation alternatives like a what's it called, group, like a lobbying group that has lots of power and influence. Like, yeah, it's so much influence. We're really, you know, we're really doing a lot. Just look around at, you know, a couple of bike lanes here and there. So anyway, that's all I got. Maybe this is the same Bud truck that had to change its flat tire in the middle of 7th Avenue yesterday. Anyway, thanks for watching. This has been Bike Talk. Hey, there's a Tesla. Guess what? That Jersey Tesla, he doesn't pay New York City taxes, drives around in our streets, and barely pays to come and do anything. Can't wait for congestion pricing. So people like that have to pay a little bit more. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time. Well, actually, I have to dock first, and then I'll see you next time. Like and subscribe.